The friendship between Adaze and Nkem began where all great friendships do, in the shared language of survival. They met at 15 in a crowded Lagos secondary school, both scholarship students surrounded by children of wealth. While others arrived in chauffeur-driven cars, Adaze and Nkem took Danfo buses. While others complained about pocket money, they ate bread and groundnuts for lunch, saving every naira. They became inseparable. Late night studying by candlelight, whispered dreams about university, careers, escaping the cycle of barely enough. They promised each other, "We will make it together." And they did. Partially. By 27, both had graduated. Adazin worked in a mid-level marketing firm, her salary decent but unremarkable. Nkem worked in finance, climbing slowly, methodically, with the same determination that had carried her through school. They still met every Saturday for lunch, still shared everything, until Adaze met Dubem. Dubem Okafor was everything Lagos worshipped: old money, Oxford education, a portfolio of investments that generated wealth while he slept. He wore custom suits like second skin, drove a Range Rover Sport, and moved through the world with the ease of someone who had never questioned whether he belonged. Adaze met him at a corporate event. He pursued her with the intensity of a man used to getting what he wanted. Within 3 months, she was his girlfriend, and her life transformed. Suddenly, Adaze's Instagram was filled with rooftop dinners at Knock by Alara, weekends in Cape Town, designer bags casually placed in the background of her photos. She moved from her one-bedroom flat in Sulunere to Dubem's penthouse in Ikoyi with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lagoon. Nkem watched it all unfold. At first, she was genuinely happy. She celebrated with Adaze, admired the dresses, listened to stories about charity galas and yacht parties. But slowly, so slowly, Nkem didn't even notice when it started. A bitter seed took root. It began with small observations. The way Adaze treated waiters differently now. The way doors opened, literally and figuratively, because Dubem's name carried weight. The way Adaze no longer checked prices on menus, no longer calculated whether she could afford the Uber home. Nkem, meanwhile, was still budgeting, still taking buses when fuel was too expensive, still living in a shared apartment in Yaba where the generator failed every other night. We started at the same place, Nkem thought. The only difference is him. She began to study Dubem during the group dinners Adaze occasionally organized. He was charming, attentive to Adaze in public. He spoke about business with casual confidence, dropped names of politicians and CEOs. He was handsome in that specific way wealth enhances. Tailored clothing, expensive cologne, the glow of someone who had never known real stress. And Nkem began to wonder, why her and not me? The thought was poison, but once planted, it grew. She started noticing cracks in Adaze's happiness. The way Dubem sometimes interrupted her mid-sentence. The way Adaze laughed a little too loudly at his jokes, as if performing. The occasional shadow that crossed her friend's face when Dubem checked his phone during dinner. Nkem told herself she was being observant, caring, a good friend paying attention. But the truth was darker. She was cataloging evidence that Adaze didn't truly deserve this life, that she, Nkem, would handle it better, appreciate it more. I'm smarter. I work harder. I've sacrificed more. Why should she have everything just because she got lucky? The first boundary she crossed was small. A LinkedIn message to Dubem. Hey, great seeing you last weekend. I'm working on a financial analysis project. Would love to pick your brain if you have time. Dubem responded within an hour. They met for coffee. Then another coffee. Then drinks after work. Just the two of them, discussing business, laughing about shared observations. Nkem made sure never to mention these meetings to Adaeze. It's not wrong, she told herself. We're just friends, professional contacts. But she dressed more carefully for these meetings, let her hand linger when they said goodbye, laughed at his jokes with genuine delight, never the performance she'd observed in Adaeze. Dubem noticed. The affair began on a rainy Thursday evening. Dubem had invited Nkem to preview a property he was developing, a luxury apartment complex in Victoria Island. Adaeze was traveling for work. They stood in an empty penthouse, rain drumming against the windows, the city lights blurred and beautiful below. "You are different from other women I know," Dubem said, standing too close. "You're hungry, ambitious. You remind me of myself before I got comfortable." Nkem's heart pounded. This was the moment. She could step back, preserve the friendship, choose integrity. Instead, she stepped forward. "Maybe that's what you need," she whispered. "Someone who still remembers what it means to fight for something." The kiss was inevitable. So was everything that followed. For 3 months, Nkem lived a double life. During Saturday lunches, she listened to Adaze's concerns about Dubem's distance, his late nights, his distraction. She offered comfort, advice, sympathy, all while texting him under the table, planning their next meeting. "I deserve this," she told herself every time guilt surfaced. Adaze has had everything handed to her. She doesn't appreciate what she has. She rewrote their shared history in her mind. Adaze had always been slightly luckier, slightly more favored. The scholarship to university, Nkem scored higher, but Adaze's interview went better. The first job, connections, not merit. None of it was true, but Nkem needed it to be. The final boundary dissolved when Dubem said, "I'm going to end things with Adaze. I want to be with you." Nkem should have felt triumph. Instead, for a moment, she felt sick. But the moment passed. Dubem broke up with Adaze via text. Nkem wasn't there to witness the fallout. Dubem had advised her to lay low for a few weeks. But she saw the Instagram post. Adaze's account went dark. Mutual friends whispered about how devastated she was, how she'd moved back to her old flat, how she'd been blindsided. One friend sent Nkem a message. "How could you be? I can't believe what Dubem did to Ada. After everything, men are trash." Nkem typed and deleted 5 responses before settling on, "I can't believe it either. Heartbreaking." 2 months later, Dubem made their relationship public. The backlash was immediate. Mutual friends pieced together the timeline. Adaze's silence was louder than any accusation. Nkem's phone filled with messages. "How could you be? You were her best friend. I hope it was worth it." She blocked them all. Told herself they didn't understand, that they were jealous too. Dubem moved her into the Ikoyi penthouse. Finally, the life she had envied was hers. The first month was intoxicating. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, trips to Dubai and London. Nkem photographed everything, posted it all, watched the likes accumulate like validation. But slowly, reality revealed itself. Dubem was different in private. The charm he displayed in public evaporated behind closed doors. He was controlling, dictating what she wore, who she saw, how she spent her time. "Why are you meeting your co-workers for drinks?" he'd ask, voice calm but eyes cold. "You don't need those people anymore. You have me." The wealth came with strings. Expensive gifts were tools for control. "I bought you that bag, and this is how you repay me, by questioning me?" He disappeared for days without explanation, returning with generic excuses and no patience for her concerns. The sex became mechanical, transactional. He was often absent even when physically present, scrolling through his phone, making business calls, while she lay beside him feeling more alone than she'd ever felt in her Yaba apartment. Worse was the emptiness. The friends she'd blocked didn't reach out anymore. The new circle Dubem introduced her to, society wives and mistresses, were polite but distant, their smiles not quite reaching their eyes. They recognized what she was, the latest replacement, temporary until someone newer caught his attention. She had no one to call, no one to confide in. Adaeze, her best friend, her sister, her constant for over a decade, was gone. And the absence was a wound that wealth could not heal. Nkem would catch her reflection in the penthouse's expensive mirrors and not recognize herself.
1 year after the relationship began, Nkem found herself alone in the penthouse on her 29th birthday. Dubem had promised dinner. He'd cancelled via text 3 hours before. Business emergency, we'll celebrate tomorrow. There would be no tomorrow celebration. There never was. She sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the same Lagos skyline that had once seemed magical, and finally allowed herself to see the truth. She had traded everything real for something hollow. The friendship she'd destroyed had been built on shared struggle, mutual support, genuine love. Adaeze had celebrated her victories, comforted her losses, believed in her when no one else did, and Nkem had burned it all for a man who didn't even remember her birthday. The wealth was empty. The lifestyle was performance. The relationship was transactional. She was an accessory, interchangeable, temporary. She had envied Adaeze's life without understanding that what made Adaeze's life beautiful wasn't Dubem's money. It was the integrity Adaeze still possessed, the friendships, the self-respect, the ability to look in the mirror and recognize herself. All things Nkem had surrendered. She tried once to reach out to Adaeze. A simple text. "I'm sorry. I know it's not enough, but I'm sorry." The message sat unread for 3 days before finally showing a single grey checkmark. Read. No response. Nkem didn't blame her. 2 years later, Nkem finally left. She walked away from the penthouse, the lifestyle, the man who had been a mirage of security. She moved into a modest flat, started rebuilding her career, began the slow, painful work of reconstructing her self-respect. The wealth was gone. So were the Instagram likes, the envy of strangers, the temporary validation. But so was the poison. She never tried to contact Adaeze again. Some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness, and Nkem understood she'd forfeited that right. But sometimes, late at night, she thought about what she'd tell her younger self if she could go back to that rainy Thursday evening.